my name is Francesca Giobbi, and I am extremely honored to interview David Icke, a writer and a researcher of the real economy. Welcome, David Icke, to FreedomeE.com TV.
Well, I'm super honored to receive David Icke to the FreedomeE channel. And I'm here to ask for the person of the truth to tell the truth for the Brazilian and Portuguese people. So, David, how could you summarize what we're going through today?
Well, it's been a very long story and a very long road. And it's now reached a crucial stage, because there are two worlds that we live in. There's the one of the population, which is born and then goes to school and university maybe, and goes into the world of work and all that. And then there's another world of what I call the global cult, which is a global network of secret societies and connected groups that living in a different world, and the difference between the worlds is knowledge, it's information. So we have this network of secret societies for a simple reason: it's to keep secrets. Well, who from? With the population. And the two major areas that we have to be kept in ignorance about are A, where this cult is taking the world, the direction it's taking us, although that's become more and more obvious in the last 2 years. And secondly, that crucially, we have to be kept in ignorance of the nature of the very reality that we're experiencing and the very nature of the I that we are. And so a whole system has been set up, which has been developed over, in our perception of time, a very long period. I mean, we're going back thousands of years to the start of the process, in which you control the information that the target population gets. Because what you're after is their perception. Because from their perception comes everything else. Their behavior comes from that, everything comes from that. So perception is what you must grasp to mass control a population. And so you introduce an education system, which is nothing more than a perceptual download. It's two elements to it, two main elements to it. One is you tell people from the earliest age what they should believe about the world, about possibility, about everything, about history, and what they should believe about themselves. And the other element of it is that you, from the earliest age, ensure that they realize that if you do what authority tells you, you have a certain outcome. And if you challenge or refuse to do what authority tells you, then there's a very different outcome. And so the two things from the very earliest ages, when children go to school in, 3-4 years of age these days, is to A, start the process of downloading their perceptions for life, of reality, themselves, everything. And secondly, to let them know that there are consequences for challenging or questioning authority. And it's much easier if you just go along with what you're told. And this goes on through your formative years, and then you go out into the world of work and you meet lots of people who've been through what you've been through earlier than you, and they have overwhelmingly bought the download that you've been subjected to. And so everyone's confirming to everyone else that what they've been told is true, because basically they haven't heard anything else. You've got the media now 24/7 that are underpinning in the way they report the world and supporting the perceptual download that you've been getting since you came into the world. And people therefore go from cradle to grave with a perception of reality that is nothing more than what the state in its various forms has downloaded you to have. And the next part of it is to give people consequences throughout their life for not buying the download. So if you, I call this download the postage stamp consensus, because it's such a narrow band of information and sense of the possible, which is what they want you in. They don't want you knowing what's going on. And so if you, from when you're at school, when you're at work, or if you're in the public eye, you step off the postage stamp and you start saying things or questioning things that this cult doesn't want you to question. And you get the consequences. You get the censorship, you get the attacks, you get the abuse, you get the ridicule and all the rest of it. And so it's a carrot and stick from the very early stage in school. It's a carrot and stick process. Do what authority wants and we'll kind of leave you alone. Although, you know, you'll have to do what we say without question, but we won't treat you like we'll treat the ones that are questioning us. And so today you have this manifested in front of you in the most blatant way, in the way that those that have been fake vaccinated are treated, and those who have not been fake vaccinated are treated. This is a classic expression of this process I'm talking about. Now, in the other world, through the initiations that I'm talking about, the inner core of this secret society network, no, you know, not Bill and Joe down the Freemasons Lodge in the local town, they have this knowledge passed on through these secret societies of what the agenda is for the world, more and more centralization of power until it's total global mass control, which is where we've moved massively further towards in the last few years. And secondly, this is the real nature of reality. And the real nature of reality is so different from the one that the population is given. Population is basically told to believe in one or two things, overwhelmingly the first. And that is that this world is solid, that it's physical, that everything's apart from everything else, that nothing's connected, that we're all just an individual cosmic accident, and that, you know, we come from nowhere and we have a few seconds or 100 years as a human, and then we go, well, into nowhere. And the only alternative to that is that we are basically subject to a loving God who threatens us with great hell and fury if we don't do what he says. And it's always a bloke. So these are basically the two worlds. And what people like me have been doing is uncovering what's in this world, what the plan is, and uncovering the nature of reality that they're trying to keep from us, which will set us free, and passing it on to this world. And when you do that, as I've been doing now for 32 years, you get enormous amounts of abuse and ridicule, because this world, one of the great areas of programming, perceptual programming, is to squeeze the sense of the possible. So you want people in a very narrow band of their sense of what's possible, what can happen. So when someone like me comes along and says, actually, this is what's happening, and this is how they're manipulating you, the response is, well, that's impossible. You're mad. That's impossible. That can't happen. But the fact is, it's not impossible. It's that you believe it's impossible, and they're not the same thing. So you get in mainstream science this thing with the so-called paranormal, where even though vast numbers of people have had these paranormal experiences, they genuinely have had them, mainstream science says they can't have had them because we can't explain how they could have had them, therefore they can't possibly have had them. And it's this confusion between what you believe is possible and what is actually possible that is one of the great ways that people's perception is scrambled. And the whole idea, just to finish the answer, the whole idea is to keep the population in ignorance of everything they need to know to understand their plight and what's happening, understand who they are, to the point where you cross a line where you've got so total control over them that even if they realize what was happening, by then it will be too late. And this is why they have, and this whole agenda for the world, it's incredibly coordinated. The dots connect in the most extraordinary way, but they are presented to the population as if all these stepping stones to this same outcome are all random events and completely unconnected, which keeps people thinking that actually these are just random accidents and there's no coordination. When actually, if you know where we're being taken, you can see that absolutely they're stepping stones to that outcome. And the great thing is that because at the turn of 2020, if you'd have said to people, the world will be like it is by the end of 2022, they would have called you crazy, mad, and they would say that could never happen. We would never let it happen. But because it has happened, that's woken a lot of people up to ask this question. Well, look, if I didn't believe this could happen, but it has, what else do I believe that needs a revisiting? And maybe I shouldn't be dismissing things as impossible, because this would, to me, have been impossible in early 2020, but it's happened. It's opened a lot of minds up.
Yeah, so you were saying that we're living two separate worlds.
Yeah.
So one world is for less than 0.01% of the population that rules the world, and the other part it's 99.99% of the population. And this 1% manipulates us in every sense through the economic part, because they manipulate us from education, from early education, then in our work, in all, and then in media, in everything. So how do you see us being awake and have a solution for that?
Well, that's a big question, and there are many answers to it. One is getting informed and not getting your information from the mainstream media and believing that they're going to tell you the truth. I mean, how funny is that? I worked in the mainstream media when it was much better than it is now, and it was bad enough then. Now it's a catastrophe in terms of truth and factual information. But there's other levels to it which I think are more important. And that's to appreciate that this cult is not trying to hide the nature of reality from us and the nature of the I from us for a bit of fun. It's doing it because it's fundamental to its success, because the whole foundation, I've been saying this for decades now, the whole foundation of human control is to isolate human perception, awareness, in the five senses, in what I call body mind. The level of consciousness, because we're multi-level consciousness, but that level of consciousness that directly interacts with this world through the conscious mind and through levels of the unconscious mind. And if you can get isolated only in that body, mind, five sense level of awareness and perception, then you've basically put people in a perceptual prison cell, because what they'll see in that world is a world that's solid, even though it isn't, a world that's physical, and therefore a world that's incredibly limited and has very, very limited potential and is very difficult to change. And in that world of the five senses, you tend to self-identify your I with the labels of a human life. So you will, in reply to someone saying hello, nice to meet you, who are you? You'll give them a list of labels that are just experiences of a human life. You'll tell them your name, you'll tell them where you live, maybe where you were born. They'll tell you, you tell them maybe your race, your religion, your sexuality. Anyone needs to know that, I don't know, but on all these, you might talk about your income bracket or whatever. And what you're doing is you're self-identifying with these labels, and these labels are experiences. They're not the I. The I is the consciousness, eternal, infinite state of awareness that's having the experience. And the body, mind, five sense level of our perception should be in touch and being influenced by expanded states of awareness beyond this world. Because then, like a computer and a computer operator, the computer is directly interacting with the internet, but the operator's got the bigger picture. It's outside the computer. It can see what the computer can't see, and it's guiding through the keys and the mouse where the computer needs to go. And what happens if you get a computer virus, as they call them? If it's bad enough, then the computer stops responding to the operator. So you can do what you like with the keys and the mouse. The computer's going its own way because it's being directed by the virus now. And that's basically what has happened to humanity, and it's been done systematically. So that the basic technique is to isolate perception and attention in the five senses, what I call the bubble, and then program that isolated state of awareness with a perception of reality that suits the agenda. And then we're back to the education system and the media and all that stuff that is all part of this perceptual download. And when we talk about awakening, what is that? It's simply expanding your point of attention, your point of awareness out of that five sense bubble and into more expanded states of consciousness. And that's why when people go through this awakening process, they start to see the world completely differently, because they've stopped looking at it like that and they've started looking at it like that. And from this point of view, you see the panorama, you can see the dots connect and how they connect, whereas there you can only see individual dots, and the world changes. And so if you are this global cult, which at its core is a very, very few people, compared with the global population, it's tiny, you have to make sure that five sense level of awareness is not being influenced in its insight, in its intuition, in its awareness by expanded states of consciousness. And that's the thing, really. And the perceptual download that I talked about earlier is all about focusing attention and identifying everything with the world of the seen. And people don't know this, or the vast majority of people don't know this. The world of the seen, what we call visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see as a visual reality, is so tiny, it's hysterical. It's ridiculous. It's such a tiny band of frequency that we actually call the visible world. Everything beyond that band of frequency is invisible to us. Infinity's out there, but we can't see it because of the way the body-mind decodes reality. And so it's a process from the moment you come into this world to put you in that postage stamp consensus band of ignorance and keep you going until you go out the other end. And the challenge to that, which is now beginning to happen with more and more and more people, far more than ever before in the 32 years I've been doing it, massively more. They're starting to break out of those prison cell bubbles and start to ask the big questions. And that's another point, earlier in my life, I used to think, why don't people ask who are we? What is this place? What are we doing here? Why don't they ask those things? It should be a fundamental tenet of everything. how can we get an understanding of what we're experiencing if we don't know what we're experiencing? We don't know where it is, what it is, who we are, where we come from, where we go. These are the big questions. Now, it's an important point that why don't people ask those big questions in enormous numbers? Why don't the media explore those big questions? Why doesn't the education system explore those big questions as a fundamental pillar and foundation of education? Because they don't want us exploring those things, because they want to keep us in ignorance. Because once we realize the nature of the reality we're experiencing and how we interact with it, then we can realize that actually we control our own lives, or we can control our own lives, and not let outside forces control it for us.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You know, we are kept in our five senses with being afraid
Yeah.
of everything, especially in countries like Brazil. We're a third world country, and we are a very interesting country because we are a union of different cultures and religions living in one ecosystem, and we never had any internal war or anything. We are super, friendly. Brazilians are super friendly.
Yeah.
And not only Brazilian, but the other Portuguese speaking countries, they're super friendly. But the problem is, since we have been grown up with different religions, and those religions put us in different boxes because they came with the answers for us. So where do we come from? They say. Why you're here? They say everything to us. So I will ask you, who are we? What is this place?
Well, you picked up a very important point there. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in what they call the universe. Some say it's as high as 0.5%, but whatever, it's absolutely tiny. And visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, is a smear, and it is a smear of the 0.005%. And what religions are saying, all of them, basically, is all you need to know to understand the world, all you need to know to comprehend everything, is between the covers of a single book within a smear of 0.005% of what exists in the universe. That is insane. And you're absolutely right in what you say, that we are being told what to believe about these big questions. I mean, if you look at the mainstream science, it's basically we come from nowhere and we go to nowhere. And if it's religion, it's some judgmental God is calling the shots. So I rejected both of those at a very early age, but I got on with my life in football and what have you, journalism. And I didn't really look at, okay, so what is it then? Until, I had this incredible head-blowing spiritual experience and awakening in 1990. And what I came into this arena, although I'm well known for the names, dates, places, conspiracy, I came into this arena seeking to know those big questions, the answers to those big questions. And still today, my great passion above everything is the nature of reality and how we interact with it, because that's it dictates and gives us the means to take control of our own life, as I say, to stop life living us and for us to start living life. Because most people, life lives them. You kind of indicated earlier, people just go through their life sleepwalking, being sort of guided by authority in their various expressions. And that's not who we are. That's who we have been manipulated to think we are, and who manipulated to behave as if we are. So if we, well, I mean, this is well, I don't know where to go with this, because there's so many levels and so many parts of it. But let's just say, okay, so who am I? What's your I, or your ultimate I? It's a state of awareness. It's simply a state of being aware, I would suggest. And what we call form is a vehicle for our awareness, our state of being aware, to experience different situations and different experiences. Now, okay, we are a state of awareness. Okay, but how aware? That's the point. This consciousness that we're part of, this consciousness that we're all an expression of, it's where this whole thing about we are one comes from, is infinite in nature. And so how many people are accessing a big chunk of that consciousness with all its potential insight, understanding, intuitive knowing, all that? Not that many, compared with the fact that everyone has the potential to do that. And the real reason they're not is because their focus of attention has been put in this body, mind, five senses. So it is all literally, in the end, about the span of your attention. Are you so focused in your attention that you can only see and perceive your physical body and your physical labels and experiences? Or are you more expanded in your span of attention, so that you realize that this is actually just a brief experience of a much greater you? And obviously, where this cult wants people is here. And the stadium in which this whole control of human society plays out is the stadium of perception. And it's perception that will set us free, or it's perception, as it has up to this point, that will enslave us. And for this reason, if you look at the world of the five senses, which is the one that we experience all the time, then it sees everything as apart from everything else. So it sees different forms, and because it's only seeing a certain band of frequency, and that band of frequency relates to what we call form, objects. And so it sees objects, but it sees objects as apart from everything else, and it sees itself as apart from everything else, because the visual band of frequency does not go deep enough into the field for you to see that actually beyond the form is a infinite field of consciousness that connects everything. So like the fish and sea life are all connected by the ocean. And, you know, the fish may not be aware of it, but they might think they're all individuals, connected individuals, but the ocean connects them all. And we live in this ocean of consciousness, possibility, probability, that that we, in a five sense way, can't see. So if you are only viewing the world through the five senses, to you, everything is apart from everything else. Now, first of all, that gives you a phenomenal potential to divide and rule the population, because division, well, the five senses can only see division. But the greater self is aware that there is no division. Everything is connected. So this makes things like racism ridiculous, because we're all part of the same consciousness. You know, what are we arguing about the color of the spacesuit for? You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just a vehicle to experience. Get on with it. But to the cult, it's a wonderful way of dividing and ruling people by keeping them in this perception of apartness and separation. And that's an expression of this great separation between that 5 sense body mind level and expanded awareness. They need to separate those two things for reasons I've described. So why is perception so important? Because every time every thought that we have, every emotion that we feel is generating a frequency. And the frequencies are represented by the nature of the thought and the emotion. So emotions like depression and hatred and fear and anxiety are very low, slow frequencies. That's why when we're in these states, we can say, oh, I feel so heavy today. It's because the energetic field, our energetic field, of which the body is an expression, is being impacted by the slow, low frequencies of what we're putting out. And thus it goes into a state of greater density. And when we feel joy and love and happiness, people say, I feel so light today, because those frequencies are fast and quick and high. And so what we call our perception is the sum total of those frequencies. And so what we're putting out as frequencies is dictating how we interact with this field, this sea, this ocean of potentiality and possibility that we're all part of. So if you have a self-identity, a perception that you are insignificant, that you have no power, that you are not in control of your life, and you have to look to authority to tell you what to think, then that is a sense of limitation, a massive sense of limitation. And that perception of limitation will generate frequencies that are expressions of limitation. So you will be interacting with this field of possibility and probability in a very, very low and narrow band of frequency. So the possibility and probability you're able to interact with and manifest as an experience is very, very limited. Not because it has to be, but because your belief becomes your experience in this way. What you believe, you perceive. What you perceive, you experience because of this interaction. So someone with that little me sense of self will live a little me life. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because it's a feedback loop between your perception and possibility and probability, in which your perception is manifesting itself through. And so that's where the cult wants us, in these low vibrational, limited states of perception and self-identity of perception. So that actually what it's doing, it knows that this is big part of what's passed on through the secret society network. It knows that if it can get our perception through this, this interaction, it will dictate our experience. So if you want people to leave you alone so you can go on doing what you want with the world without any pushback or any challenge, you want people in that state of being. And we've seen vast numbers of people in the COVID era who are in that state of being. That's why what's happened has happened. But then you see the experience of people who are in a different perceptual state, the awakening perceptual state, because we're always awakening. And that's when people start to expand their sense of the possible out of the 5 sense program. They start to reevaluate their self-identity from just the labels of a human life to I am the consciousness having those experiences, eternal, infinite state of awareness. And what that does is, from that myopia of self-identity, which creates a myopia of perceptual field, suddenly that expansion of self-identity becomes an expansion of your consciousness into greater and greater swathes and higher frequencies of the infinite field. And what happens, of course, when people go through that is they notice that their life changes. They get this synchronicity, coincidences happen. Fancy seeing you here. What's the chances of that? Oh, I got a bit of luck just when I needed it. But it's not luck. The more you expand your awareness to interact with greater and greater swathes of possibility, the more possibilities you're able to manifest as an experience. So your life starts to expand. It becomes much more of an adventure and not just an existence. You become far more aware of your true potential to control your own life and your own experience by changing your perception. And this is, of course, the last thing this cult wants. It doesn't want expanded awareness. It can't manipulate that. It needs people in the 5 sense prison cell, and then it can manipulate that as it's shown. So, you know, people say, what's the answer? And, you know, you can do the physical human world stuff, you know, or start an organization, and the classic, we must start a new political party. That's absolutely a waste of space. That is, you're never going to change anything through politics. Politics is there to stop it changing and to advance this agenda. It's not there to change anything. It's the people that have to change it by simply ceasing to cooperate with their own enslavement. And, you know, there's billions of us, there's a handful of them. I think I see a way out of this, but only if people can see actually, A, what's going on, and B, at where the real power is. And it's not with authority, it's with us. Authority's power that's recycled against us is only the power we've given to them in the form of acquiescence. That's all it is. So if you get down to the foundations of how we change everything, is we change ourselves. And so the fundamental bottom line is self-identity. Who do you think you are? Do you think you are someone who's just a body, and for what the biblical 70 years and 10, and that's who you are? Or do you think that you are subject to some judgmental God judging you second by second? Or do you realize that you are actually an expression of what people call God? You are an expression of this infinite state of awareness. And therefore, you have the potential to take control of your life and your reality. And those two groups of people will live very different lives. And it's this awakening to the true self that's going to change things, because it's the being put to sleep into what I call phantom self, the fake self of human labels, that has got us into this situation.
Yeah, so you were saying that, first of all, we are energy, and we choose our energy of love, of construction, of production, of making things happen, or the energy of fear, the ego. It's for me, it's not for you. No, it's the energy that that it's ruling our planet right now.
Well, that's an interesting point, because you keep using the word fear. And it's right that you do, because fear is the greatest tool of human control. And what did I say earlier about emotions and thoughts giving out frequencies? That fear is a very low, slow frequency. And anxiety, depression, and resentment, these are all expressions of fear, actually. So the consciousness, because in the end, you know, you've got the people in form in this cult manipulating the humans in form in the population, but people, it doesn't matter if you're an extraterrestrial or a human or a cult member. The reason you behave as you do is because of your state of consciousness. It's your state of consciousness that dictates your behavior. So it don't matter what you look like. It matters what you are in terms of consciousness. So the state of consciousness of this cult and that which is behind the cult from the shadows, by the very nature that it seeks to control and impose its will upon the population in general, means that it's in a very, very low level state of awareness, because only idiots and morons want to control other people. Something else too, only insecure people want to control other people, because insecure people are very ill at ease with states of flux where they can't call the outcome. This cult is terrified of situations that it can't call the outcome. That's why if the cult was involved in a football match, it'd have to control both sides and the referee, so it knew the score before the first ball was kicked. That's insecurity. You look at any control freak you've ever come across, all control freaks are insecure because they have to control everything to pander to their insecurity. Whereas secure people, truly awakening people, are quite happy with states of flux. Oh, it makes life interesting. It makes life spontaneous and gives you variety of experience. So states of flux are no problem to someone who's secure. So we're dealing, therefore, with a state of consciousness that's deeply distorted. Evil, which is the absence of love in my definition. You take love out of anything and you have what we call evil. And so what we need is an infusion of love, quite obviously. But also the state of awareness is in a very low vibrational state. And it's in the frequency band of fear. This is the point, that this consciousness, which the Native American tribal group called the Cree call Wetiko, a mind virus, Wetiko, it is in a state of fear itself. That's what its insecurity comes from, because it's actually feeding off human energy, and without being able to do that, it's in serious trouble. It needs us vastly more than we need it. In fact, we don't need it at all. And so it's very dependent on us. I go into all this in the books in detail. And so it's in a constant state of fear of being found out. And how does it feed off us? Well, if you're in a low frequency state, in the realm of fear and or anxiety, which it is, for all its bravado, it is, then if you're going to feed off someone else's energy and get your energetic sustenance from that, like the energetic vampires, which is what they are, then you can only do that with people who are in the same frequency band that you're in. Otherwise, you can't attach to them, just like radio stations on different wavelengths can't attach to each other. So, well, neither can they. So what they have to do is draw humanity, by the way they structure society, into these fear and anxiety states of being, resentment, hatred, anything like that, so that they enter this frequency layer of this, if you like, Wetiko. And once that's done, there can be an attachment so that energy can be vampired, but also that attachment allows perceptual programming to pass between the two. And basically mass possession, if you like. And when I realized that this cult existed and what it was doing, I wanted to know when it started, and I wanted to know how it could do what it did and how far back it went and all the rest of it. And I found, as I scanned around the ancient world and native cultures, that actually they all basically refer to it, a hidden force manipulating human society by manipulating human mind, perception. So if you look at the Christian religion, it talks about the devil and Satan and demons. You look at the Gnostics, which are a kind of semi-Christian religion. Their devil is called Yaldabaoth, and their demons are called archons, or Greek for rulers. You look at the Islamic religion, and they talk about the jinn and the way the jinn manipulate from the unseen. Everywhere you look, and then, like I say, you go into the Native American and Native Canadian arena, and you come across this old concept of Wetiko. So I've studied all this and seen that they're actually talking about the same thing. So in the end, you know, what's interesting now is that I'm hearing more and more people who would have never said it before, who are saying, it's a spiritual war we're in, isn't it? And I don't like the word war, but it is a spiritual tussle between that which seeks to love, freedom, justice, fairness, and that which seeks control, not from here and here, seeks control. And that's where we're at. And so this force of control has been manipulating humanity along a road for a long time in our perception of time. And the process has been, from the ancient world to now, to incessantly centralize power and decision making. Because the more you centralize power, the more power you have at the center for the few. Every step towards more centralization of power is a step towards fewer and fewer people dictating to more and more people. So we had a situation at one time where humans organized themselves into tribes. Then we had this massive change when the tribes came together and formed themselves into nations. Now a few people at the center of the nation are dictating to all that group of former tribes that were before deciding for themselves. And now in places like Europe and the United Nations and all these global organizations, you're seeing the amalgamation of the nations into control groups, where a few at the center of, say, the European Union dictate to all the members of the European Union throughout Europe. And all the time you've had this this move to fewer and fewer people controlling more and more. One of the biggest periods when this happened was colonialization, because this cult can be tracked out of Sumer, Babylon, Egypt, and up into Rome for the Roman Empire, and then up into Europe for the European empires, and especially the British Empire. And then these cult-owned countries by then in Europe, not least the British, but the others too, they then colonized the world, and they took it over. And basically the cult went global. And then when we had this sleight of hand, which was the European nations giving independence to the former colonies, that's not what happened. They left out in those countries the secret society networks and particular family groupings that operate in those countries for the cult. And they've gone on controlling the country ever since. It's just that they've moved from something you can see, colonial rule, you know who your masters are, to covert control and manipulation, where you control two or three of the three major political parties in a country. So it doesn't matter if party A, party B, or even party C get in, because you're controlling all of them. And so we have all these one-party states now, cult party states, that masquerade as multiple party states, which are supposed to offer political choice when it's all an illusion. And then after the colonial period allowed that initial explosion to global influence of the cult, then we went into the globalization period, which added more extremes to that. And now we have a situation where a tiny few people at the center of this web are dictating global events. And so what they've done is they've used a technique which I coined back in the 1990s of problem, reaction, solution. You create the problem or the illusion of it. You then tell the public through an unquestioning media what to think of the problem, which is what you want them to think of the problem. And you want at stage 2 a reaction to the problem from the public that basically says either do something or is open to what you suggest you've got to do in reaction to the problem. And then we move to stage 3 after the problem and the reaction. The people that have manipulated the problem or the illusion of it then offer the solutions to the problems they've created. And those solutions are always advancing this agenda towards total global dystopia and centralization of global power. So if you look at human-caused climate change and you look at the COVID era, they are another expression of this technique, which I call no problem reaction solution, in the sense that there's not a real problem, but you've manipulated the perception of a problem, and thus you can offer the solution to what people perceive as the problem. So again, it's a mind game. You don't even need a real problem. You just need to for people to believe there's one, and then they'll be open to you changing the world in reaction to the problem, not really to advance your agenda. So if you look at the solutions to human-caused climate change and to COVID, what have they been? The imposition of centralized control over every area of our lives, down to the fine detail. And this is a classic, what I call no problem reaction solution. And if you look at what they're saying must happen to save the world from human-caused climate change, and what they've said must happen to save the world from COVID, they're the same, basically. They're centralization of global power. Because if you want to transform something globally, then you have to have a real or manufactured global problem, a global problem in need of a global solution. And then you can go to the global level and transform everywhere at the same time. So if you look at the COVID response, which has come out of the World Health Organization, which is a 100% owned and created by the Rockefellers in 1948 cult organization, then basically what it has said has been carried out by almost every nation on earth. I mean, you would think that, you have a situation like that individual nations with individual people, you would think, would maybe have different ways of dealing with it. But overwhelmingly, it's been the same. And it's because COVID and human-caused climate change are hoaxes of the same people. So you have literally the same people involved in both. You've got Bill Gates, who is Mr. Vaccine, Mr. Fake Vaccine, Mr. Lockdown. And he takes time out from that in February of 2021 to publish a book telling the world how it must change to deal with human-caused climate change. These same people are involved in both because the reason for both is the same.
The thing is, they're saying problems, they are not true, but the real problem is the poverty. People lack of opportunity. I come from a third world country. I was raised in Brazil and then raised in Italy. I'm half Brazilian, half Italian. I work in fashion for so many years. I was in Italy when Berlusconi signed up a contract with the Made in China. And it was a great alliance between Made in China and Made in Italy. They start ruling the world in fashion, in goods, in production, in industry and everything. And I decided to go back to Brazil in order to help my country to invest in the Made in Brazil. And it was completely impossible because the cost of the money to produce and to sell goods from Brazil or for third world countries, it's not competitive at all. So with that vision in India 8 years ago, I understood that the slave labor was the door of human trafficking. And I was shocked I said, and I have a belief. I believe in Jesus, but in a different Jesus, a Jesus of love. I call him Jesus because I was brought up in the Christian church, but I do not believe in how they put up Christianity. I believe in love. And I remember myself yelling and crying to Jesus to say, if you really believe, if you are true, how come you let this happen? How come you let small children being raped with this terrible drug that they're selling? How can you do this? And I was so shocked. And I remember that crying, this word in my head came to me saying, Francesca, if you think that this financial system it's not good for population, create a new one. And I said, me, a Brazilian, a woman, you know, I did architecture. I'm not a financial person, not at all. You just have to unite 144,000 people that they together will come with the truth. And when you said that before were the tribes working among them and them connecting between them and saying the truth and then one helping another, it's the vision that I had. Unite those 144,000 people, and then those 144,000 people, them together will come with the pieces of the truth. And what is the pieces of the truth? They connecting with the love and making the difference to another, giving instead of taking, changing the energy of the economy. So with that vision, I started FreedomeE. And I would like to ask you very humbly, how do you think that we can help, people that have no time to think, no time to receive knowledge, women's that they're working 16 hours a day to bring the milk for their children, and to help, to help the husband that is pushing on her, which is completely different than living in Europe. I'm talking about Brazil, Africa, Asia. So how do you see that we can help those, people that have no time to knowledge? We have to bring them a solution.
Well, we do the best we can, but the whole system is set up to have the vast number of people, the vast majority of people, in a state of survival, so that you are so busy surviving that nothing else can get in. And this has been done through the financial system, which was in its modern form created by the Rothschild family and associated banking families out of Europe. And it's based on lending people money that doesn't exist and charging them interest on it. Money that doesn't exist called credit. They give you a line of credit, which is just figures on a screen. They haven't done anything to create it except put it on the screen. And now you are paying them interest and principal on money that has not, does not, and will never exist, called credit. And this is what how this whole thing has come about. It's been the banking system lending people lending to people money that doesn't exist, having tangible assets, tangible as you can in this reality, like resources, land, a home, a business, whatever, put up as collateral, so that you'll get the money that doesn't exist, the credit, if you put up the collateral of tangible assets in case you don't pay back the money that you've never even borrowed, in truth. And so they have factored in, I've written about this at length, they factored in a cycle of what they call booms and busts. So what they do, because they control the financial system, is that they will create a boom by making lots and lots of loans of credit, which puts theoretical units of exchange in circulation. And so people have more money to buy things, and companies think they need to make more things to meet demand. And it's called a boom. And then at a particular time in the cycle, they will start not putting out so many loans. They call it, in 2008, they call it the credit crunch. And they'll start calling in loans that are already out there. And suddenly, the money that was circulating before and creating the boom is no longer there. So the units of exchange are not there to be exchanged to continue the same level of economic activity. And so you start moving into a depression, into a downturn. And as you move into the downturn, people can't earn the money that they were earning before. Companies are not making the profits they were before, but they're still subject to paying back loans that they took out in the boom time for infrastructure and technology or whatever. And when they can't pay it back, well, their tangible assets, as they go bust, go to the banks. And this has been going on for centuries, where the banking system has been exchanging non-existent money called credit for tangible assets. This is how they have sucked in the wealth of the world. This is basically how the 1% became the 1%. And another thing is, when you go for a loan for a bank, and I'll come around to the countryside of this in a minute. When you go to for a loan at a bank, what does the bank do? Say you want to borrow $100,000. All the bank does is type into your account $100,000. Because of something called fractional reserve lending, banks are allowed to lend vastly more than they actually have on deposit, though they do it in the form of credit. But this is the point, key point. And this is how so many of the countries of the so-called third world have been pulled into these massive cycles of debt. And China's doing it now to the world, as I'll come to. When you go for a loan, okay, you're going to borrow $100,000, all right. So you're only going to pay back $100,000, right? Well, no, you're going to pay back $100,000 plus interest. The interest is never created, only the principal, which means that at no point is there ever enough money, units of exchange, in circulation to pay back all the outstanding debt and all the interest on the outstanding debt. So people losing their businesses, their homes, their countries are all in the system. It's encoded in the system that must happen. Now, when you have an expansion, that's not quite so obvious, but when you have a contraction of the economy, it becomes blatantly bloody obvious that there's not enough money in circulation to pay back all the debt. So people lose their homes, they lose their businesses, they lose their countries, not because they don't want to work or it's any fault of theirs, but because that which has lent the money also controls the state of the world economy. Thus, it's creating booms and busts to ensure that you're not able to pay it back. And therefore, they get your tangible assets. And this is stripped so many countries of the so-called third world of assets, of resources they no longer control. And what China's doing now with this Belt and Road initiative, total scam, and the cult is massively centered in China now, is it's lending vast amounts of money to countries around the world for infrastructure, like in Sri Lanka and places like that. And then when they can't pay it back, the Chinese get the infrastructure. So they start owning ports in Sri Lanka. They start owning the resources of countries in Africa. They're stripping the world, but actually it's the cult stripping the world. And so you look at money, and people say, the reason they're doing it is they're greedy. Well, they are greedy, but that's not the main reason they're doing it. You have to look at what money is and what freedom is. Freedom is the ability to make choices. The more choices you can make, the freer you are. the fewer choices you can make, the less free you are. And what dictates overwhelmingly, because of the way the system's been structured on purpose, what choices you can make. Overwhelmingly, for most people, it's money. I'd love to do this with my life, but I don't have the money. And so what they're using the money system for is to squeeze and limit choice, which means to squeeze and limit freedom. So you end up with a situation, and because this cult is global, because it operates in the positions of power everywhere, you will look at China and the countries of the Far East, but China is the key one. And you will see how the production in other countries has been exported, outsourced to China and countries of the Far East. And it's been done on the surface anyway, because the goods can then be made cheaper. Why can they be made cheaper? Because of slave labor in China and the Far East. But because this is allowed to go on, because it suits the corporations, it suits the cult, it suits governments that are owned by the cult, it means that China can then not only undercut everybody in terms of price, so other companies in all the different countries that were formerly making goods for that country suddenly are out of business because the imports from China are undercutting them. And this is why the stablemate of the World Health Organization is the World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization was created by the same people and the same networks that created the World Health Organization. World Health Organization was created to put control of global healthcare under one roof, and the World Trade Organization was created to put control of world trade and the rules and laws of world trade under one roof. And so you've had this this expansion of more and more free trade areas and trading groups, and all it is exploitation groups. So you have NAFTA in America, which has exported enormous numbers of jobs to Mexico because they use slave labor and cheap labor in Mexico, the corporations in America. You've had the outsourcing to China by countries across the world, not least America, for production. So something like 90% of the ingredients of antibiotics used in American society start life in China. They are, I mean, you look at almost anything you pick up made in China.
And who is behind China?
Yeah.
Who are behind China?
This cult is behind China.
Yes.
It's no accident that this hoax was played out of China.
Yeah.
China's become a massive global center, and for this reason, the Mao Revolution in China was a cult operation. He was a cult asset, and what they were creating is a closed society, which it was for a very, very long time. It still is to a large extent. Within which, and a tyrannical closed society, in which everything was imposed. There was no debate and no opposition. Everything was imposed. And the idea was to use that situation to incubate a structure of human control, mass human control. And the idea is once it was incubated, once it was perfected, it would then be played out across the world. So they did that. And in China now, it's extraordinary. There's millions of cameras in every city that are keeping surveillance of the population 24/7. They are recording through artificial intelligence the behavior of people in all the different forms. And if you behave in a way that the tyranny wants in China, then you get credits, and if you don't, you have the credits taken away. It's called the social credit system. And if you lose enough credits, then you get excluded from society. You can't go on a train, you can't fly, you can't do all these things. If you look at what's happened to the world, an increasingly wider world, since the COVID hoax was played out of China, is that the Chinese system of mass control has been played out across the world. So if you look at these vaccine passports, what are they? They're saying, if you don't do what the government says you should do, and you behave the way you should, i.e. you have this fake vaccine, then you're going to be excluded from society. That's just the Chinese social credit system under another name. Of course, where it's planned, it's already going there, is that they tell you, have 2 jabs and you'll get your passport and you'll be able to go about your life. And then they say, oh, actually, you need a 3rd now, and it'll be a 4th, and so on. And the other part of these passports is the part of it is only part of it. What they're planning to do is to add other aspects of your life and other aspects of your behavior. And if you don't do that as the government wants, then you lose the passport, whether you're vaccinated or not. So great numbers, at least great numbers of these passports and passes are called green passes, because the aspect that's coming up is that if you don't behave in relation to climate change the way that we say, then you're also going to lose your passport. And by stealth, it becomes the social credit system in China. And if you want to see, I've been saying this for decades, if you want to see the West and the rest of the world tomorrow, then look at China today, because that's the blueprint. And all this so-called Great Reset, although there are other aspects to it as well, technologically, it's basically China going global. That's the system in China going global. That's what it's about. And we need to know that, so that we realize that actually we need to draw a line fast. And you know, those that have been jabbed and go on having them whenever they're told, they need to realize that this is just a ball and chain for them as well. And there's going to be no end to it. Because if you don't have the 5th jab, then you lose your passport. And you go back to being excluded from society in the same way as someone who hasn't had any jab. And so we need to come together, the jabbed and the non-jabbed, to realize that this is an attack on all of us.
Yes.
And the passport is a fundamentally central pillar of this control system that's unfolding, which is why they're being introduced everywhere.
So do you think that a new ecosystem is the only way that we can move out of this huge problem? How can we create a new ecosystem? I see a lot of new coins being developed in communities, and I see a lot of new coins being developed to manipulate people. So when the truth comes, there's always the bad side coming. There's so many things out there that we don't know what to believe anymore.
Yeah, I know. And that's why, you know, we keep coming back to the same thing. That's why, you know, we've got to expand our awareness out of the 5 senses, because the 5 senses are basically bewildered and they're so easy to manipulate and confuse. Whereas when you're in, it doesn't mean, you know, in expanded states of consciousness, you can't be manipulated to an extent, but you can be manipulated far less, because you're more aware and you can see things and you're getting insights and understandings. And, you know, our state of consciousness is expressed as what we call the human world. So perception equals behavior, collective behavior equals human society. So our state of perception is dictating everything. So we are looking as we look at human society, at the collective human perception made manifest. That's what it is. And if you're going to change that, you have to change what's causing it, which is perception. And there's, of course, many elements to that, like realize we're all in the gun sights of the same force, And we should stop being divided and ruled for a start and start looking after each other and looking out for each other. But if you look at a money system, okay, what is money in the way that it kind of works? You have a skill, and you want to exchange it for basically other skills. That's what we're doing all the time. When you pay a plumber to come and fix your pipes, his skill is being exchanged with you, and your skills have generated the money to give to him for his skills, and money, therefore, and it should be interest-free money, just as a unit of exchange, not a way to make money out of money. That's the root of it all. Without the money element, you're down to barter. So I have a skill. I have to find someone who needs my skill so I can barter it with their skill, and it gets very complicated. So basically, all money is, or should be, is a way of being a unit to allow someone's skill to be exchanged with someone else's without having to actually directly barter. And, I've written about this in books a long time ago, where, people have created their own local currencies. And because what you have in a economic downturn is people with skills they want to use, and people that want those skills and need those skills, but can't have them because they can't afford them. And so what these economic downturns do, all systematic, is to stop this exchange of human potential. It's what it does. So, there have been communities around the world that have overcome that, locally at least, by starting their own currency. It's a currency that doesn't actually have to exist, which is not the same as credit money not existing, because they give you credit, but they charge you interest on it. This is money that is only theoretical in these community systems, but there's no interest on it. It's just a way of exchanging skills and overcoming barter. And so they have someone who runs the whole system, like on a computer. And if I want someone to come and paint my house, then they get, we do a deal on how many, say, credits that the painting of the house is worth. And then I tell the guy on the computer running it, this person has these credits and I have a debt of these credits. So what I have to do now is use my skills that someone else in the community wants. So I then get the credits for that, which balance out the credits that I conceded to have my house painted. And it's a system where you are just unlocking skills. So the painter, having had those credits, quote, money, for painting the house, they then have those credits to employ someone else to do something for them. And what it's done in these times, and they're usually times of really economic deprivation and problem, they do unlock skills. And I think that's one road that people need to go down, and just be creative. We have these skills from people that want to contribute them to society. These people need those skills or want those skills for something they want. These people have skills that they can contribute to society. And it's just a case of working out a system whereby those skills can be exchanged in a fair way, where everyone gets a just return for what they've contributed. They work obviously better in smaller groups of community, but it is a way of getting around it to an extent. And this is what we need: creativity. Here's the problem. Okay, so what's the cause of the problem? The cause of the problem is they have skills they want to use. They have a need for those skills. So how do we square that circle? How do we put those two people together in a way that's fair to both? And it's about being creative. And when you draw a line in the sand and you say, okay, this is the situation we're facing, and we need to find a way around it. Well, people with open minds and open hearts will find a way around it, because we're dealing with all possibility and all potential. I mean, we're going to pull something out. We'll find a way around it. But it's having the will. And what it also is, and this is going to happen anyway because of what they're planning, it's disconnecting from the system as it is, as perceptually disconnecting from it as the only way that things can work. No, it's not the only way things can work. It's the way that's been imposed to suit the cult. And for instance, at Oxford University, they have a debating society called the Oxford Union. And I've spoken there about 5 times over the years. And what you do is you turn up and they take you out for a meal or something in the late afternoon. And then you go and debate in the evening at this debating society. I remember sitting around, sipping some soup just before one of these debates. And there was a student across the table, only a young lad, and a young fella. And he could not grasp there was any other way of organizing society than the way it is. He couldn't get beyond, there has to be an hierarchical structure of power. He couldn't. He was so mesmerized by it. It was his only way of perceiving the possibility of a society, our society could work. And that's a very powerful thing, because it's if you're so welded to this as it is, it stops you being creative and being expansive and seeing there are other ways of doing it. And I tell you what, there are better ways of doing it as well. This is a system of human control. We can build a system that's very different to that, but it takes the will, and it takes perceptually to disconnect from the system as it is as the only way of doing things. It's not. It's a catastrophe. As you say, look at all the poverty and all the suffering and all the extraordinary exploitation of human beings that goes on around the world. This is the only way of doing things. Are you kidding? Of course it's not. It's no. It's the way we're supposed to believe in and see no other way other than, so that we won't actually create those other ways. And we have the opportunity now, because the society that we grew up in, it's being dismantled. So it can be rebuilt, built back better in a way that suits the cult, the Great Reset, or we can build something different. And that's the challenge. And this is why
we need to build something different. We need, and this is my call, David. For the last 8 years, I've been traveling around the globe, making questions, listening to entrepreneurs, listening to producers, listening to sellers, in my field, which is fashion, and it's a field of women. Our field, fashion, beauty, tourism, goes around $7 trillion around the globe. And it's all based with small and medium entrepreneurs. But the thing is, they are so into, I have to pay my bills, I have to be there, I cannot lose my business, I have to pay my kids' school, I have to pay the milk, and they don't have time to rethink about the system. And I understood that if we unite the industry with the sellers, with the consumers, with the investors, with the philanthropists, and organize a new way, starting with collaboration, to start a new way of making money or seeing the money. And I believe, I totally agree with you. Money has to be based in productivity, real productivity. Our talents, my talents, your talents, made in me, made in you, made for us, made in every individual, made in every community, made in every country or planet. But and I really believe in collaboration. And I have to say, I read a lot of your books, and I study a lot about you, and I think you are amazing. Amazing.
Oh,
really, really, David, you are very, how to say, a strong man. You know, I can imagine in those 33 years how many things happened in your life, how many no's you had received, and thanks God that you are here. And thanks love, thanks the university, that you are, you know, the first one that is opening the doors, and then people are coming after you.
Well, the thing is that, you know, once you know that, you know, you are consciousness, an eternal expression of consciousness on an eternal experience of infinite possibility, then, you know, this world takes on a different light. You see it in a different way. The way that you're treated, the way that people try to intimidate you, authority tries to intimidate you, is not the same. You know, because if you are self-identifying as a body in a 70 life, then authority takes on a certain perception to you. But when you're all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief human experience, what some guy in a uniform or some guy in a dark suit does to you or says about you, what someone says about you on social media, it's irrelevant, because you're looking at the infinite reality that we are part of. And all this is going on in this tiny band of frequency, you know, almost infinitesimal. Compared with that, it is infinitesimal. And so what people say about you and do about you takes on a far greater lack of relevance, because my experience over the decades is that whatever they say about you, they'll say something different tomorrow. I'm now being stopped in the street by people being asked seriously to talk at what's going on in the world, what can we do, by people who were laughing at me in the street 30 years ago, who were giggling when I walked past. When I was supposed to be crazy. So the point is, it's about being true to yourself. Well, also, once you know where this is planned to go, this is what I don't understand. Well, maybe I do, but I shouldn't. Is the number of people in this period that I've been doing this, who've come into this arena, who've had some idea of what's going on, and then have disappeared. Well, I mean, where have you gone? Once you know what's happening, you can't walk away. What about the kids and the grandkids? So we're going to have to live in the world that you know is coming unless it's headed off. So you keep going, because the thought of not keeping going is just unthinkable. But you also take the slings and arrows of life in a different way. You know, when authority attacks you, you take it as confirmation you're having an effect. You know, you go, oh, well, thank you for confirming you're concerned about me. Thank you. That's very kind. And, you know, they don't censor me for, again, a bit of fun. They censor me because they're frightened of the information I'm putting out being seen by people. And this is what censorship is. People who censor are always, we're back again, they're always frightened, insecure people.
Yes.
Because secure people who are secure in what they say, secure in what they believe, they're quite happy to debate with anybody. The last thing they want to do is censor anybody. Why would they? It's insecure, frightened people that want to censor, because they know that in an open debate, they've got no chance of making a case, because they're lying. And in an open debate, they'll be shown to be lying. So if you can't win a debate, what you have to do, you have to shut it down and make sure it doesn't happen. And that is why the censorship. we've got to realize, I think, that this network is not as powerful, and it's not as all-knowing as it wants us to think. I mean, I look at Bill Gates, I look at Klaus Schwab, I look at Anthony Fauci. I don't see intelligent people. I look at Boris Johnson here in Britain. I look at the chief medical officers around the world. I mean, blimey. I mean, an intelligence test, I mean, they wouldn't get started. And so it's important that we don't give these people more power and credit than they deserve. And they're not all-knowing. Actually, a lot of them are quite stupid. What they're very good at is manipulating human perception. That's their skill. And they also, because they are themselves so limited, and because of the very fact that they want to mass control people because of their insecurity, means that they're in a very low vibrational state. So they're not, super bright. They're not. They're just very skilled at manipulating perception. So what they have to do to control the population is to make the population blind. So they, as the one-eyed man, in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. As the one-eyed man, they can control the blind. But when humans become the two-eyed, third-eyed potential that we are, then it's over. It's done. It's over. If we come out of our box, which they put us in, and they put us in the box so they can control us because of their own limitations, then it's over. It's finished. And this is why they're terrified of this awakening. Terrified of it, because it will bring the whole house of cards down. And their power is only the power that the population give away. If someone comes out of a parliament building or a White House or whatever and says this is what's going to happen, if enough people among the population say we're not doing it, we're not doing that. What do you mean we're not doing that? Wear a face nappy, we're not doing that. Ridiculous. Then they have no power. It's unenforceable. And this is why they have to divide and rule us and play off the acquiescent population against the non-acquiescent, so that they can divide and rule the population that way. And this is why they use intimidation to frighten people into compliance. But if you won't comply and you're not intimidated, they don't know what to do, because intimidation is their weapon, basically their only weapon. If you're only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. It's their weapon, intimidation. When you're not intimidated, they don't know what to do. You disarm them, literally. And one of the greatest things to do is to laugh. Because although this is serious in the sense of, what's happening, we need to sort it out. It's also hysterical what's going on and how people are acting. You stop somebody in a shop in Britain. What are you wearing a face nappy for, a face diaper on your face for? Well, the government says you should. Well, so what if the government says that you should go home and commit hara-kiri? Would you do that? Well, no. Also, there's a line you won't follow the government on then. So why are you wearing a face nappy? Have you looked at the evidence of the effectiveness? Have you looked at the evidence that even that there is a bloody virus? Well, no, you're just doing what the authorities tell you. So if the authorities, a few people say do this and you do it, well, you're giving the power for the authorities to impact upon your life. And collectively, that's what's gone on. But when you say to authority, no, I'm not doing it because it's ridiculous and it's unsupportable by the evidence, and you're lying to me, so I'm not doing it, then you're keeping your power. You're not giving it away. And as more and more people say, no, I'm not doing it, because they've got the self-respect to say no, the power of no, then you're weakening authority. Every single person who does that is weakening authority, because you're no longer empowering authority with your power. And then you'll start to realize that actually authority's power was always our power, wasn't it? Yeah. So stop giving it to them then. And then you'll see they have none. I mean, it's mathematics. How can a tiny few people dictate the lives of nearly 8 billion? It's impossible mathematically. It can only be done if the 8 billion or great chunks of them give their power to authority. And we've got to stop doing it. And when we do, authority's power will be deleted, because it's our power recycled back against us.
Yeah, I understand everything you say, and I think it's super complicated for, a woman from for Africa or for Brazil or for a third world country to start doing it. So my vision to help them to start having knowledge of their power, who they really are, it's through collaboration. It's through helping each other with their businesses, helping each other locally, and start moving the economy for them. And then when they start feeling safe with that, knowledge will come. So I always say we have to bring up a solution, and then through the solution, give education. Because it's all about, at the end, it's all about education. Who are we? Why we're here? What are my talents? People doesn't know what their talents, because they're brought up because they have to study, they have to finish university, they have to have money. You have no idea what our last government did in Brazil. So they invest a lot of money for terrible education. So there's a lot of people that doesn't know how to speak Portuguese with a diploma, with a terrible education. So
that's the idea.
And they are in debt. They're in debt. So kids that come out of the university with 22, 23, they're in debt. And there are no jobs out there.
Yeah, this is happening all over the world. I mean, it's been done by Tony Blair in Britain. That's how bad it is. But it's been done everywhere. This debt is control. That's why they want you in debt to the banking system. So they've now introduced this system where your students, young kids, and the prime of life, get stacked up with debt for decades forward, even if they can never pay it back, on money again that doesn't exist, just lines of credit. And that means control. So now you've got to serve the system to earn the money, to pay the system what it's lent you in the form of money that doesn't exist. But, in terms of, there's different people in different situations.
Yeah.
So some of the situations you describe, it's very, very difficult. But people in other situations where they can stand up and challenge the system, and they can say no. Well, everyone can say no, but I mean, they're in a position where they can do it. They're the ones that need to do it. And I would say, a starting point, whether whatever your situation, anywhere in the world, is to start with, okay, why should anyone in the world tell me what to do? Who has the right to tell me what to do? I don't care what the situation is, whether it's a family situation or what, or collective. What right does anyone have to do to tell me what to do? I tell you, you have no right to tell me what to do. What you have a right to do is persuade me to do it by the power of your argument and the power of your evidence, so that I decide, actually, yes, I think it's a good idea to do what you're asking me to do. Not telling me to do, asking me to do. And if the evidence is there and you are persuasive, I will do it. But if you've not got the evidence and you're not persuasive, and all you're doing is telling me to do it because you're telling me to do it, then I'm not doing it, because you have no right to tell me what to do like that. And if everyone then takes their own individual sovereignty from that point and says, you want me to do something? Okay, persuade me, give me the evidence. And I'm quite open to that. You've got the evidence, you've got a good reason why I should do it, I'll do it. But if you haven't, I'm not doing it. Not just because you tell me, I'm not doing it. And most people, if you look at it, are doing what authority tells them because authority tells them. I mean, the nonsense of the COVID era, backed by no science, nothing, just diktats out of nowhere, was centrally coordinated, and people just do it. No, you persuade me that what you're asking me to do has a valid, a good reason for me to do it, and I'll very much consider doing it. You give me an order and no evidence to support it, up yours, mate. No way I'm doing it. And it's taking that initial individual sovereignty back in any form of life or situation of life you're in, where you decide what you do and don't do, and not someone else.
So we have to help people to start thinking by themselves, give tools for them to start thinking, about their choices and having back their free will. I think this is the only way. And I do understand you, because you speak for people to Europe, people that are more educated, and then woke up because understood that the system is unsustainable. But my biggest challenge is to help people that are not awakened in the third world countries. This is my biggest challenge, David, and I'm trying my best with FreedomeE solution by uniting a social media together with an ecosystem of collaboration with a marketplace. I am giving all the experience that I had traveling around the globe, seeing that the same problem that I have with the English woman, it's the same problem that I have with the Portuguese woman or the Brazilian or South Africa woman. It's the same problem. Why I'm facing the woman problem? Because for me, it's easier to start from one point, because I have to start from somewhere. And
yeah, sure.
and I have to say something. In Brazil, 8 years ago, I became part of this group called Virada Feminina, which is this amazing lady that she was teaching the entrepreneurs to ask for better laws. And when I saw myself, I was in Brasilia, in the Congress, saying, no, we need to change these laws. Those laws are no good for the amount of the money they're asking for interest for small and medium entrepreneurs, especially women. And when you give a loan to a woman, she will pay you back. This is for sure, because it's her name. She has children to feed, and it's a huge responsibility. And but this is my huge challenge. It's how can I show the way for the people that do not now have the time to rethink, and give them some opportunities, and without those opportunities, they will start thinking differently. This is my biggest challenge. So what will be your wisdom to me?
Well, I think that, like I said a few minutes ago, a good start is for people to ask the question, why are other people telling them what to do?
Okay.
And because that then reevaluates the nature of the I. I have self-respect. So you're not telling me what to do. You can persuade me, but you're not telling me what to do. Because who are you to tell me what to do? You're a human being. I'm a human being. What gives you the right to tell me what to do? You could persuade me, like I say, and I'll decide. But you tell me, and I just do it because you tell me, and it's not happening. But of course, what you need then is the unity of other people in the same situation with the same attitudes that will collectively make that impact. You're seeing in different parts of the world now where people who are saying that they won't do things like, they absolutely are not having this jab and all the rest of it. Collectively, they're having an impact because, people are realizing the catastrophe that's coming along the line when all those people get sacked from things like medical professions. But they're holding their line. The people who refuse this jab, they're saying, who are you to tell me what to do? I'm not doing it. And, collectively, if we just start from that very simple premise, I'm a sovereign human being, I will make my decisions on what I do, not you or someone else, then you start to take your power back immediately from that point of view. And it's a good, simple starting point. Collectively, it can have a massive impact. In England here, where we've had big pushback on this situation, they have not introduced in the period that we've just gone through up to now, the same level of restrictions that have happened in other countries of the United Kingdom, because they don't think they're going to get away with it. And it does have an effect, but it takes the courage and the determination to act upon what you see rather than just see it and think how terrible it is. Well, it is, but what are we going to do about it? Are we going to cooperate with something we think is terrible? No, we're not. If enough people don't, then it can't happen. People can't be made to do something if enough people won't do it. Can't happen. It's not unenforceable. And that's where the answer lies. And so, people in oppressed situations, they need to get together and act as one unit. And the more and more people that do it, the more the change will be enforced upon people. See, this is what I say about, I hear so often people say when there's a problem or society's not working, we need to start a new political party. Well, that's just a waste of space. The system's going to make sure you get nowhere anyway, but you're just becoming part of the system that you say is not working. Instead of getting in the system, the system needs to respond to us. The system can only operate with our cooperation, so we withdraw our cooperation. And the system changes or it doesn't get our cooperation. So the system has to change if enough people do it. People have no idea what the real power is. It's in the collective power of no, actually, and the collective power of self-respect. And anyone's capable of doing that if they just make the choice to do it.
Yes. And I think that our call is to help them to find the importance of the collaboration, the importance of knowing who we are and making the right questions.
The importance of unity, a unity of purpose, a unity of strength, a unity of self-respect. That's what will bring it down. That's what's brought down every tyranny in history. And it will bring this one down. But we've got to get on with it. We really have.
Yes, that's for sure. David, what can I do to help your call?
Well, it's what is my cause? It's communicating information. That's all it is. Because information leads to perception, perception leads to behavior, and on we go again. So it's about communicating a different way of seeing the world and a different way of seeing reality. So anyone that can share the information that I put out is giving me great support. So any way that can happen, anyone can help by sharing this video, for instance, is making a contribution to that.
Yes, I will do my best to translate in Portuguese and help the Brazilians. Portuguese, a lot of people speak English, but in Africa, a lot of people needs that. I will do my best. And Rodrigo, he would like to make you a question if you allowed us to. Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. David, before asking you a question, I have to say that the point in my life as a spiritual leader, and that I have been for the past decade, I've always thought about this moment, and now it's here. And the only thing in my mind is thank you, all of your courage, heart, and love for the truth. My contribution to your work was to dub hours of interviews, of your interviews in Brazilian Portuguese, and build a website to it, which I can show you later. And it's a shame that only Brazilians who have, yeah, I will show you later. And I think it's a shame that only Brazilians who has access of learning English, like myself, had access to your book, which is a solvable thing, which we can. And I have literally thousands of questions to ask, and I'm very excited. But I will ask only one. In your journey, did you get to know Allan Kardec, diffused in England, Arthur Conan Doyle, and which spiritual philosophy lives mostly in Brazil nowadays? So, did you know Allan Kardec spiritualism diffused in England by? And do you think that spiritualism is paramount for a new collaborative economy?
Well, there's a number of people over the years that I've read about what they have to say, and there's people I respect. But in the end, it has to come from you, and what you make of it, and what you make of reality and yourself. It has to come from you. It has to be your uniqueness. So you can take from the good things that from other people, but in the end, it's you that decides what you make of it and what you believe and what you don't believe. So that we are in this field of infinite possibility, and therefore all possibility is infinitely possible. And there's this idea where people talk about we're all one. Yeah, we're all aspects of the same consciousness, but we are unique expressions of that consciousness. And we should therefore celebrate our uniqueness, in our individual uniqueness, as well as celebrating the fact that collectively we're all expressions of each other. And there's no contradiction in celebrating your own uniqueness and knowing that we're all one. And so it's important, I think, that people come to their own conclusions and don't take them just off the shelf from other people. And as I said earlier, we are seeing such a tiny band of frequency. We're aware of so little of infinite possibility that, as Socrates said in ancient Greece, wisdom is knowing how little we know. And on a spiritual journey, humility is always required, because once you think you know it all, you're just confirming you don't. Because we are detached from the vastness of, detached in terms of influence from the vastness of forever, and thus in a human life we can only access so much, and therefore the premise, the foundation of everything that I've done is always whatever I know and whatever I think I know. One thing I know more than anything, there's always more to know. And this is why the religious approach of we have the answers and we know what you need to know is always limiting, perceptually limiting. They're like buffer stops. Don't go any further because this is all you need to know. But I prefer the Socrates philosophy of the one thing you know is there's vastly more to know than you could ever know in a human life. So it needs some humility. And what that does is it keeps your mind constantly open to all possibility. Because what's closed humanity off in these prisons of the five sense mind is believing that they know what they need to know and that they know what is possible. the one thing we know about possibility is we have no idea what is possible, because what is infinite possibility, if you think about it? I mean, it's very difficult for the human mind to comprehend infinite possibility. Everything is possible. And so it keeps your mind open, so that you don't believe everything you're told, of course not, but you're always open to other possibility, in the knowledge that there's always more to know.
Yeah.
That's what I've been teaching in my philosophy for the last 10 years. Thank you for confirming what I've read from you and what I've learned from you. And for my public, thank you so much.
Thank you, mate.
David, it was an honor to have almost 2 hours of your time. You have no idea how I'm happy. When I was a little girl, I wanted to meet Madonna. When I grown up spiritually, I wanted to meet David Icke, and here I am. So I am super honored and happy. I'll have so many questions for you. You have no idea, but thank you so much. I think this will be a good starting point for the Portuguese countries.
Right.
And I put myself to translate your books, to translate your audios, your videos, whatever you need to multiplicate your knowledge. We are here to do it, and you are a very good man. Thank you so much with all my heart.
Well, that's very, very kind, and congratulations on all you're doing as well. And you know, my videos go on davidicke.com several times a week, and anyone in the world can take those videos and translate them. I mean, people should feel free to do that. The more they circulate, the better.
Perfect. So we will do it. If you have some videos of yours that you think are the beginning for the open knowledge, please let us know to start with, because I think we have to have a starting point.
Okay, I'll do that.
I really appreciate that. And David, you're a good man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.